Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akel nהיה b'dvareh. L'chaim, everyone. Okay.
Were you away for good reason? Were you away?
Yes. Last week, Mendel and what was it? Last week, Tuesday, Mushka had her orientation last week, Tuesday.
Oh. To what?
So we had to take the kids to school for kindergarten, preschool. They're getting big, so they're in school in Boynton now.
What? In Boynton Beach?
Well, it's like Delray. It's about 30 minutes.
How do they get? Do they get there with other children in a van or what?
So I drive them, and then we're going to be carpooling with a neighbor on some days.
Oh my goodness gracious! What happened
Yep.
to the school right here?
So they only have a preschool. They don't have a kindergarten yet. So Leah and Chana are right here, but Mendel and Mushka are off to big boy school.
And big girl school.
And big girl school, exactly. Yep. Okay. Good morning, Rita. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Baruch Hashem. Very good. Good to have you back. Good to see you again. Bela Esther, how about yourself?
Hello,
Yes. How are you?
Rabbi?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? We hear you and we see you.
Hello? Can anybody
Yeah,
hear
we
me?
hear you. We see you. We all hear you. And Susie, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Rabbi, how are you today?
Thank you for asking. Doing very well. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
So let's jump right in. We'll start our screen share for those who are able to see. And we'll jump right into it. So I'm going to change the settings so that I can see everyone. Oops. There we go. Move this to the middle. And here we are. Okay. So, last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, we finished off with the part that speaks about the rabbis who had their suffering. And all the rabbis, with all the suffering and with all the greatness that comes from the suffering, all of them said they would rather to not have the suffering nor the reward that comes from the suffering. So wait, what is this here? Why can't I choose? Here, commentaries. Okay, perfect. So we're on Brachas 5b. Do you see where I have highlighted? The Gemara relates another story regarding acknowledgement of the justice of divine punishment. So we're going to have, I think this is the last story for now about punishment and affliction. And then we'll get right into, get back into prayer. 400 barrels of Rav Huna's wine fermented and turned into vinegar, causing him great financial loss. 400 barrels is a lot, especially in those days. Rav Yehuda, the brother of Rav Salah the Pious, along with the sages, and some say that it was Rav Ada bar Ahava, along with the sages, entered to visit him. And they said, The master should examine his actions, as perhaps he committed a transgression for which he is being punished. Rav Huna said to them, am I suspect in your eyes? Have I committed a transgression on account of which you advise me to examine my behavior? They said to him, is the Holy One, blessed be He, is God suspect that He exacts punishment without justice? Your loss was certainly just, and you must examine your conduct to find out why. The sages were aware of a flaw in Rav Huna's conduct, to which they alluded. Rav Huna said to them, if someone has heard something improper that I have done, let him say so. They said to him, we have heard that the master does not give a share of his grapevines to his tenant farmers. A tenant farmer is entitled to a portion of the crop grown on his landlord's property, as well as a share of the vines planted during a given year. So there's any worker that is working with fully finished product, whether they are people or animals, or even birds, must be allowed to eat from the product. 1 second, Bela Esther is calling in.
Hello, can you hear me now? Can you
I
hear me
can.
now?
I can hear you. Hear you?
Well, I'm
Rabbi
sure
left. The
you're
rabbi left in a
okay.
second.
I can hear you, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so okay. Thank
All's
you.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Baruch Hashem. Hey, is that Debbie there?
Does everyone hear me again?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, perfect. Bela Esther, if you can hear me, can you give a thumbs up? Yes? Brett, you here? Okay.
We were just able to hear her and see her.
No, she muted herself. Okay.
Hello,
Yeah, we hear you.
can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear you. Cannot.
Try and see what happens if you hit a little microphone on the left. There's a little
I
arrow
can't
next to the
hear you.
microphone. Oh, I forgot about that. You were able to hear us before? Good morning, Steve.
Morning. Had some trouble getting in to the meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you for persisting and persevering. So, what we started this morning is one more story about God's justice and meting out of punishment, if we shall. And so Rav Huna had 400 barrels of wine that turned into vinegar, and the rabbis came to visit him, and they said, you should look at your actions, maybe you've done something wrong. And they told him that he hasn't been giving the allotted portion to his workers, that if there's any worker, even if it's an animal that's working with finished food, grains, fruits, whatever it is, they are entitled to a certain portion of the crop while they're eating. And if it's a tenant farmer, so the way it worked in those days is you had, I think they call it a sharecropper, where he lives on your property and he takes care of your property and takes a percentage of your property as payment. So he wasn't giving them the proper amount. So here we have in the highlighted, Rav Huna said to them, Rav Huna said to them, does this tenant farmer leave me anything from the produce that he grows on my property? He steals it all. Consequently, in denying him his share of the grapevines, I'm simply recouping that which was stolen from me by this tenant farmer. He takes it on his own, so I don't have to give him extra. They said to him, that is the meaning of the folk saying, one who steals from a thief has a taste of theft. Or in the Yiddish, gan v'ganu v'time. At the end, he stole from a thief, but at the end of the day, he stole. So despite the fact that the property was stolen to begin with, one nevertheless engages in theft. Although he did not violate a prohibition per se, it is still a form of theft, and one who is held to a higher standard than others will be punished for it. He said to them, Rav Huna said to the rabbis, I accept upon myself to give my tenant farmer his portion in the future. Thereupon, as a result of Rav Huna's repentance, God restored his loss. Some say his vinegar turned back into wine, and some say the price of vinegar rose and it was sold at the same price as wine. Today we have a story of repentance. Getting ready for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, L'chaim. The Gemara returns to the topic of prayer. Is the screen big enough for everyone to see? Yes? Good.
Yeah. It'd be
It was
easier
taught
if
in
it
a
was,
brisa. Sorry?
it'd be easier if it was larger.
Okay, so let me make it a little bit bigger. Is this bigger? Is this better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, very good. The Gemara returns to the topic of prayer. It was taught in the Braita that the Tana Abba Binyamin used to say, all of my life I have taken great pains with regards to two things, that my prayer should be before my bed, and that my bed should be placed north to south. Does anybody have any idea what he's trying to say, or why he would try to make sure that his prayer should be before his bed, and that his bed should be placed north to south?
Well, that goes back to our old discussions about when to say the Shema before twilight, after twilight, and all that.
And
Very good.
And
facing-
north to south. Well, if the bed is placed north to south, then he gets out of bed facing the east. Then he can be sure to get out of the bed facing the east.
Right.
Okay. Let's see what the very, very good suggestions. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Steve. Zalman. Let us see inside what how the Gemara analyzes this. Abba Binyamin's statement requires explanation. With regard to his statement that my prayer should be before my bed, the Gemara asks, what does it mean before my bed? If you say that it literally means that he would stand before his bed and pray, it is difficult. In other words, we can't say that he actually stood and prayed before his bed, in front of his bed, as Rabbi Yehuda said, that Rav said, and some say that it was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi who said the following teaching. From where is it derived that one who prays should have nothing separating between him and the wall, as it is stated, and Chizkiyahu faced the wall and he prayed, in order to facilitate his concentration during prayer. That being said, why would Abba Binyamin pray before his bed? So it can't mean that he literally was standing in front of his bed and praying. Rather, do not say that before my bed refers to where he stood during prayer, but rather say that he prayed adjacent to the time that he would retire to bed. He was careful to recite Shema and recite the evening prayer just before going to sleep. So that fits with what we were saying before we got into the whole story of affliction, that even though we davened in shul and we said the Shema during the evening prayers, we should still say Shema right before we go to bed. Now, Abba Binyamin's second statement, and those of you who said that it has a reference and a connection to God's Shekhinah, God's presence in the east, very good that you picked up on that. Abba Binyamin's statement, and my bed should be placed north to south, was in deference to the divine presence which rests between the east and the west. The direction of the temple, as the Holy of Holies, was to the west, while the main entrance was to the east. Therefore, the sages were careful not to perform actions inconsistent with that sanctity while facing east to west. And therefore, Abba Binyamin was careful not to sleep in a bed that faced from east to west. In praise of that stringency of not sleeping from east to west and making sure that your bed is facing north to south, the sages added that Rabbi Chama said, and we're going to learn later also that this same thing applies to a bathroom, that your bathroom should be facing north to south, not east to west. In praise of that stringency, the sages added that Rabbi Chama said, that Rabbi Hanina said, that Rabbi Yitzchak said. So Rabbi Chama is quoting his teacher, Rabbi Hanina, who's quoting his teacher, Rabbi Yitzchak. And what did he say? One who places his bed facing north to south will be rewarded with male children, as it is stated, and whose belly you fill with your treasure, who have sons in plenty, and leave their abundance to their babies. So the word "your treasure," as you see here in the brackets, the word for treasure is utzfunecha. Does anybody know the word for north in Hebrew?
No.
No, the word for north in Hebrew is tzafon, which has similar lettering to utzfunecha. So your treasure can also be read as those who face north. Utzfunecha, those who face for you to the north, have sons in plenty. This verse indicates that one who sets his bed facing north will be rewarded with sons in plenty, as north tzafon is etymologically similar to your treasure tzfunecha. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, moreover, not only will she have baby boys, but his wife will not miscarry. From where do we derive this? From, remember we were learning that there's a juxtaposition, that if you have, not juxtaposition, a similar word, that if you have one word in one place and one word in another place, then we can make what's called a gezerah shava and learn from one concept to the other because of the similar wording that's used. And that's what we're going to employ over here. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, moreover, his wife will not miscarry. From where do we derive this? It is written here in one verse, it says, and whose belly you fill with your treasure. And whose belly is tamale. Tamale means to fill. Whose belly you fill with your treasure. The verse that we just learned, and then we spoke that it was talking about those who sleep facing north, with their head to the north. And tamale means you fill. And is written there concerning Rebekah's pregnancy, and her time to give birth was fulfilled. What does fulfilled mean? Vayimleu. Tamale and vayimleu have similar etymological roots, and there were twins in her belly. Consequently, you fill with your treasure refers to a pregnancy that proceeds without complication and becomes full term, and everything is good. So that was Abba Binyamin talking about praying before he goes to sleep and talking about, we quoted his conversation about praying Shema before he goes to sleep. So we added the rest of his sentence that he spoke, which was about the position of his bed. And now that we're already quoting Abba Binyamin, we're going to quote another quote from Abba Binyamin. Another of Abba Binyamin's statements regard to the laws of prayer was taught in a bridal. Abba Binyamin says, if two people enter a synagogue outside of the city, yeah, we hear you. If two people enter a synagogue outside of the city in order to pray, and one began praying before the other and did not wait for the other person to complete his prayer, and he left him alone in the synagogue, his prayer is thrown back in his face because he left the other person alone and caused him to be distracted during his prayer. His own prayer is thrown back in his face. Before we get to the proof over here, and this may, if we draw back on one of our original discussions, let me ask you, why is it a problem to leave someone alone in a synagogue outside the city?
Sounds like it might not be safe.
It sounds like it might not be safe. Okay, very good. And does anyone remember what the danger is? From, we had this a while ago, towards the beginning. Something about it's only if there's one person, but if there's two people, this thing does not come. When we were learning about the broken down houses, the ruins.
Earthquakes?
We learned that outside, it's okay. We learned that outside of the city, the demons don't come into the city. The demons only have access outside of the city.
Can you hear
And
me
even
now?
outside of the city. We hear you. Even outside of the city, the demons only come if there's one person. But if there's more than one person, the demons don't come. So these synagogues that were outside of the city, if there were two people there and one person left before the other one, if one person left before the other one, then they, if one person left before the other one, then the person would be left alone, would be scared that they're going to be stuck with the demons. I'm going to answer from Brett.
Hello?
Rabbi, how do you
No.
define demons?
Right now, I see the page that you're showing.
I think he's gone. Rabbi, you still there?
Yeah.
I
can't
see
hear
an
you.
arrow next to 3 lines.
No, I see him, but I can't hear him.
I can't find the microphone.
No, we
On the bottom, yeah.
we can't. No, I can't hear him either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now I'm unmuted. Now can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can't hear him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Rabbi, can you hear us?
Join phone audio? I don't see that.
No, hold on.
No, I
Jody.
only see a cancel setting. Okay, so you can hear me, but I can't hear you. And
Joni? Hey, Sue. Yeah? I just want to make sure if you were there.
Yeah, apparently,
can Steve hear you? Because Steve was saying we can't hear you.
yeah, we can't hear the rabbi.
Right, right.
He
Not
says,
if I-
I'll be right back.
Okay, so I don't know what to do.
Wait, he comes back.
Yeah, he says he'll be right back.
I don't remember my password.
We can hear everyone.
Okay, I can
Rabbi's
hear
the
you
only one-
now, but that's because I'm on the
Rabbi
phone,
is
right?
the only one we can't hear. I don't know if he can hear us. Raise your hand if you
Yeah,
can.
I don't know what the password is.
Hold on, ladies. Hold on a minute. Rabbi,
I got the
Raise-
passcode and I got the meeting
Rabbi,
code,
raise your hand if you can
but
hear.
I've never been able to hear anybody.
Yes, we can hear everyone but the rabbi. So let me handle this, please. Rabbi,
How do I do
can you
that?
hear us? Please raise your hand. Okay,
Okay.
he can't hear us.
Hi. Rabbi's not here.
Yeah, he's connecting. He's working on it.
Was it me or was it the?
We heard you.
No, it's him.
It's
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 him.
the rabbi?
It's the rabbi. He's working on it. He's the only one not connected to the audio.
But you could hear me, Steve?
yeah.
Yes, we can hear each other. If you look on it, you'll see a little. If you look on Rabbi's screen, you'll see a message up there. He's connecting to audio and can't hear you yet.
Okay, I'm in Rita's room sharing her screen with her.
Okay, does everyone hear me now?
Okay, there you are.
I don't know why.
But
my
I'm in
picture's like
Rita's
that.
Yeah.
room.
Okay, perfect. So basically that phone call knocked me off. I'm using my phone for the audio to make sure that we don't get kicked off where if my internet goes low. So that phone call knocked me off of the meeting, but now we're back. Can everyone hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Everything-
Everyone sees the screen again?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you make it bigger again?
Yeah. It's not big enough.
Okay. Okay. So
Rabbi, what's a demon?
what is a demon? Oh, that's a good question. That's a
We
very good
can't
question.
read the screen. The letters are too small. I'm in Rita's room.
It's okay. You can zoom in. You can zoom in on the screen. I think we have like 15 more minutes, so we want to get through just a little more. So I'll make it just a little bigger. That make it easier. So that is a good question. There are some who say that it is actually a so demons are evil forces basically, and they sometimes come in human form or animal form, like physical form,
Are you a demon?
and they cause destruction and harm. Today they are no longer around. They have been banished by some of the great rabbis. But it used to be not uncommon for people to encounter demons, and was not something that you want to encounter. There were some very frightening stories. So if somebody was outside the city and there are two people, then the demons are not going to come. But if he leaves the shul, then the other person is going to be scared because he wants to finish up quickly that he can run and go back home with the other person. In those days, many times the shul was outside of the city. And so because the first guy is causing the second one to lose his focus, to lose concentration, his prayer is thrown back in his face. In other words, his prayer is not accepted because he was causing the other person distress. So because he left the other person alone and caused him to be distracted during his prayer, his own prayer is thrown back in his face. And the proof is, where do we see this? As it is stated, it's hinted to in a verse. What is the verse that hints to this? As it is stated, you who throw your soul in your face, for your sake will the earth be forsaken, the rock will be moved from its place. This verse indicates that one who left the other person alone effectively causes his soul, as prayer is the outpouring of the soul before God, to be thrown in his face. God says to that person, for your sake, do you think because you left, the earth will be forsaken, that God will leave the world and the prayer of the other person will go unheard? So because this person causes the other person, right, the guy who's leaving, causes the one who's staying to stop his prayers, God says, I don't like that. I'm going to listen to his prayer and I'm going to throw your prayer back in your face. Not only that this person's prayer goes unanswered, but it causes the divine presence to remove itself from Israel, from the people of Israel. As it is stated in continuation of the verse, the rock will be moved from its place. The rock is a reference to God, and he is moved from its place is a force to remove his presence. And how do we know that rock means God? And rock means nothing other than the Holy One, blessed be he, as it is stated, of the rock that gave birth to you, you have been unmindful, and you have forgotten God who bore you. So we see that God is referenced as a rock, stronghold. So when a person leaves someone else in the shul by himself and causes him to get distracted from his prayers, it's not a good thing. And the Gemara asks, and if he waited for him in the synagogue, what is his reward? If you're giving punishments for leaving, you have to get rewarded for staying. Is his reward proportionate to the punishment received by one who failed to do so? And here we give ourselves a very big pat on the back, a very big round of applause. We have finished page 5b, and we are on to 6a. We are making progress. In terms of this reward, Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Hanina, said, one who waits in the synagogue for the other to finish his prayer merits the following blessings. As it is stated, if only you had listened to my mitzvos, then your peace would be as a river, and your righteousness as the waves of the sea. Your seed would be as the sand, and the offspring of your body like the grains thereof. His name would be neither cut off nor destroyed from before me. The explanation of this passage is based on the etymological similarity between the word mitzvah, which means mitzvah, and the word sevet, which means group. And the way we're reading it is as follows. If he keeps the other person company and remains in a group with him and does not abandon him after his prayer, all the blessings that appear later in the verse will be fulfilled in him. So if you wait, you get good blessings. And now, here, this is special for you, Joan, what we're about to learn, and then we get into some interesting stories about demons. So now that we spoke about Abba Binyamin, because we were trying to get, this is the way the Talmud works. Because we're talking about classroom discussions, and classroom discussions then were a little different than they are now. So, and also we're talking about grown men who were talking for the most part. So we got very distracted. We started by saying, okay, let's get back to prayer. How do we get back to prayer? By talking about something that Rabbi Abba Binyamin said. Then we said, okay, let's talk about something else about prayer that Abba Binyamin said. Don't leave someone alone in the synagogue. Why? Because you might leave him alone with the demons. Oh, demons, Abba Binyamin? I know something Abba Binyamin said about demons. And now we've gone away from the prayer once again, but we'll get back. In another braita that was taught that Abba Binyamin says, if the eye was given permission to see, no creature would be able to withstand the abundance and ubiquity of the demons and continue to live unaffected by them. In other words, if we could see demons, if humans could see demons, we would go crazy. Some animals are able to see and remain okay, but human beings, if we would understand the demons, if we would be able to see the demons, we would go crazy. Similarly, Abaya said, they are more numerous than we are, and they stand over us like mounds of earth surrounding a pit. Rav Huna said, each and every one of us has 1,000 demons to his left and 10,000 to his right. God protects people from these demons. As it says in the verse, 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand. They will not approach you. Summarizing the effects of the demons, Rava said, the crowding at the Kala. What's the Kala? The Kala is the gatherings of Torah study during Elul, preparing for the high holidays, during Adar, preparing for Passover, is from the demons. In other words, if you're ever in a crowd and you feel very stuffy and claustrophobic, that stuffiness and claustrophobia is coming from the demons. If you're ever walking alone and you feel that there's someone with you, that feeling coming from the demons. Those knees that are fatigued even though one did not exert himself, is from the demons. If your knees get weary, even though you weren't just running, that comes from the demons. Those clothes of the sages that wear out, despite the fact they do not engage in physical labor. Why do the sages' clothes get so worn out even if they're not involved in labor? It's from friction with the demons. Those feet that are in pain is from the demons. One who seeks to know that demons exist should place fine ashes around his bed. And in the morning, the demon's footprints appear like chicken's footprints in the ash. And one who seeks to see them, you want to see the demons? Should take the afterbirth of a firstborn female black cat, which was born to a firstborn female black cat. Burn it in the fire, grind it, and place it in his eyes, and he will see them. He must then place the ashes in an iron tube, sealed with an iron seal, lest the demon steal it from him. And then he must seal the opening so he will not be harmed. And someone tried it. Don't try this at home. Someone went and tried it. Rav Bevai bar Abaye, Abaye's son, Rav Bevai, or Bivi, as some call him, performed this procedure. And he saw the demons, and he went crazy. He was harmed. The sages prayed for mercy on his behalf, and he was healed. So don't try that at home. You have the instructions, but please don't try it, because I don't know if my prayers work the same way as the prayers of the sages in the Talmud.
Where you gotta find the afterbirth of a cat.
Where are you going to find the firstborn black cat? I don't know. Start breeding? It was taught in the Brisa that Abba Binyamin said, okay, now we're back to Abba Binyamin and we're back to prayer. One's prayer is only fully heard in the synagogue, as it is stated with regard to King Solomon's prayer in the temple. Yet you have turned toward the prayer of your servant and to his supplication. Lord my God, listen to the song and the prayer which your servant prays before you on this day. The following verse concludes, to hear the prayer your servant directs towards this place. We see that one's prayer is heard specifically in the temple, of which the synagogue is a microcosm. In other words, now that we don't have the temple, every shul is like a little temple. So what are we learning from the verse of King Solomon? It may be inferred that in a place of song, in a synagogue where God's praises are sung, there prayers should be. Where should you conduct your prayers? In the place of the temple where we are singing God's prayers and God's praise. In explaining Abba Binyamin's statement, Ravin bar Rav Ada said that Rabbi Yitzchak said, from where is it derived that the Holy One, blessed be He, is located in a synagogue? How do we know that God is in the shul? Excuse me, as it is stated. God stands in the congregation of God. In the midst of the judges, He judges. The congregation of God is the place where people congregate to sing God's praises, and God is located among His congregation. So, if you go to the shul, that's where God is. God goes in the place of congregation. Now, what happens if you're not in the shul, but you have a minyan? From where is it derived that 10 people who pray, the divine presence is with them? As it is stated, God stands in the congregation of God. And the minimum number of people that constitute a congregation is a quorum of 10. So if you have a minyan, God is there even if you're not in shul. What happens if you don't have 10 people? From where is it derived that 3 who sit in judgment, the divine presence is with them? In other words, you have the judges that are sitting and judging the people. There's only 3 of them. How do we know that God is with them? It is derived from this same verse, as it is stated, in the midst of the judges, He judges. In the midst of the judges, He judges. And the minimum number of judges that comprises a court is 3. So even if you have 3 people that are sitting and involved, God is with them. From where is it derived that two who sit and engage in Torah study, the divine presence is with them? What if you don't have three, you only have two? Is the divine presence still with them? Yes. As it is stated, then they that feared the Lord spoke one with another, and the Lord listened. So they that feared the Lord were speaking one with another. There are two people, and they're speaking with one another. They were speaking together, two people, and the Lord listened and heard, and a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that think upon his name. So the divine presence listens to any two God-fearing individuals who speak with each other. With regard to this verse, the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase in the verse, and think upon his name? What does it mean that God is there for those who think upon his name? Rav Ashi said, if a person intended to perform a mitzvah, but due to circumstances beyond his control, he did not perform it, the verse ascribes him credit as if he performed the mitzvah, as he is among those that think upon God's name. The Gemara returns to Rav Ada bar Avin's statement. And from where is it derived that when even one person sits and engages in Torah study, the divine presence is with him? As it is stated, in every place where I cause my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. Wherever it is that we are mentioning God's name, wherever it is that we are learning, God is with us. God blesses even a single person who mentions God's name or reference to Torah study. So here comes the big question. Since the divine presence rests even upon one who engages in Torah study, why was it necessary to say that the divine presence rests on two people who study Torah together? Just bring a verse that says even if there's one guy, and we'll know for sure that two people. The Gemara answers, there is a difference between them. Two people, their words of Torah are written in the book of remembrance, as it is stated in the verse about the two people, that a book of remembrance was written. However, a single individual's words of Torah are not written down in a book of remembrance. Now the Gemara is going to continue. I think we'll finish with this, going all the way back through 10. So the Gemara continues, since the divine presence rests even upon two who engage in Torah study, is it necessary to mention three? The Gemara answers, here too a special verse is necessary, lest you say that judgment is merely to keep the peace among citizenry, and the divine presence does not come and rest upon those who sit in judgment, as they are not engaged in Torah study, right? This is a civil matter, making sure that people are civil, not necessarily just for the sake of learning Torah. The Rav Ada teaches us that sitting in judgment is also Torah. The Gemara asks, since the divine presence rests even upon three, is it necessary to mention 10? The Gemara answers, the divine presence arrives before a group of 10. As the verse, God stands in the congregation of God, indicates that when 10 individuals who comprise a congregation arrive, the divine presence is already there. For a group of 3 judges, however, the divine presence does not arrive until they all sit and begin their deliberations, as in midst of the judges, he judges. God aids them in their judgment, but does not arrive before them. Let's pause here, and next week we'll pick up that the Gemara says that God himself wears tefillin. So today we went back to the discussion. We finished one final story about afflictions of love and how Rav Huna repented and his loss was restored. We learned a few statements from Rav Ada bar Avin about prayer, about which way you should be your bed should be facing, and about making sure not to leave someone alone if they could be affected by the demons. Then we spoke a little bit about the demons, and we finished off with learning that if there's a shul, God is there. If there's 10 people, God is there. If there's 3 people, God is there. If there's 2 people learning Torah, God is there. And finally, even if there is 1 person, God is there with them, and the differences between the level of presentness that God is there with them. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. Wishing you a happy week, a wonderful week.
Bye-bye.
And all
Thank
the
you,
best.
Rabbi.
Same to you, Rabbi. Best to everyone, too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.